What is going on, Trash Talkers? We're back with another episode for you. In today's video, we're going to talk about the players that are on the roster bubble for each team in the NFC North. All that and much more coming your way right now! All right, Nick, as we continue the series, we have finished with the AFC, and now we are moving on to the NFC, specifically talking about the NFC North. And I want to start off with the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears had a complete overhaul this year, it seems like. New quarterback, new offensive system. Literally everything is kind of coming to fruition for the Bears, kind of starting over. And that means getting rid of some of the players that really didn't work out in this system. And some of those players could be on the roster bubble as early as this offseason, as early as this training camp. So I want to talk about players specifically like wide receiver Riley Ridley, cornerback Artie Burns, and running back Ryan Nall. Out of these, which do you think is the biggest surprise to be on the roster bubble for the Bears moving forward?
Yeah, these are some big names that we find on the roster bubble for the Chicago Bears, but I think that just goes to show you how deep the Chicago Bears are getting at some of their positions. And I think the biggest one to note on this list is Riley Ridley, the younger brother of Calvin Ridley. Riley Ridley has been on this roster for the Chicago Bears for the last 3 years, and he just has not lived up to expectations. He has been nowhere even close to replicating what his brother has been doing in Atlanta. Riley Ridley has been dropping further and further on this depth chart, and now he finds himself on the roster bubble. He hasn't been having the best of camps, just being quite average for the most part, and he hasn't done anything to really stand out. Riley Ridley's really got to pick up the pace this training camp if he wants to continue playing for the Chicago Bears.
Absolutely. Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings, and we have players such as Drew Samaya, Stephen Weatherly, and Amir Abdullah. I want to talk about Amir Abdullah, though, the running back here. Amir Abdullah is one of those guys that has always been able to just be inserted into the lineup and produce in a pinch, but it seems where the Vikings are going, they are relying more heavily not only on this passing attack with Thielen and Jefferson, but also the fact that Irv Smith is coming along, and then Dalvin Cook has really taken the reins as the RB1. Nobody's questioning his spot. The question becomes who becomes the RB2 here. I believe that Alexander Mattison has taken control and taken the reins of that position, and he's not giving that up. If you've seen over the last couple of years when Dalvin Cook needs to come out of a game or if he gets injured, you see Alexander Mattison take over, and he just keeps going right where Dalvin Cook left off. So they have a very good give and take as the 1 and 2 combination at the running back position. I believe that Amir Abdullah is going to be just one of those guys that didn't get a chance to produce enough and somebody else took his spot. So I believe that he's the biggest surprise for the Vikings on their roster bubble.
Up next, we have the Green Bay Packers, and the biggest names to note for them on the roster bubble are wide receiver Devin Funchess, tight end Jace Sternberger, and cornerback Josh Jackson. But the biggest one of them all, the biggest surprise being Devin Funchess, the receiver that sat out last season due to COVID. Now he's back, but he's just not being the productive receiver they hoped he would be. Coming off of that fantastic season he had in Indianapolis, Devin Funchess is a big body wide receiver, and they're hoping he does big things with Aaron Rodgers, but he just hasn't been doing so well. Amari Rodgers has been added to this roster, and now we see Devin Funchess starting to fall a little bit. Devin Funchess may fall out of favor by the end of training camp if he doesn't start to improve his game.
And finally, we have the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are one of those teams that are kind of in the middle of a rebuild. They got a brand new head coach. They brought in a new quarterback in the trade with Matthew Stafford going to Los Angeles. Now they have Jared Goff at the helm, and that leaves a lot left to be desired. So now we have to take a look at this Lions team and see whether there's other players that shouldn't be on this roster as they continue to move forward, as they continue to rebuild. And I want to take a look at 3 players in particular, starting off with Trey Flowers at defensive end, defensive tackle Deshaun Hand, and wide receiver Brashad Perriman. The biggest name here to note for me is obviously Trey Flowers. Trey Flowers was the big free agent acquisition that they made a couple of years ago. He came over from the New England Patriots, joined Matt Patricia when he was the head coach of the Lions, and really tried to incorporate that Belichick way, the Patriot way in Detroit, and get this franchise back up and running like they used to be. It just hasn't worked out. Trey Flowers is one of those guys that has just faltered every step of the way since he got to Detroit. When you take a look at his stats last year, he started 5 games, only played in 7. He wasn't hurt. Oh, and by the way, he only had 2 sacks and 22 total tackles. It was one of his worst statistical years since he entered the league, and he was a third-round draft pick coming into the Patriots, which most rookies don't even get to play, and he had a better year that first year with the Patriots. So overall, I believe that he needs to show something in camp, that he belongs on this team, that he should remain a starter, because they're paying him way too much money to be on this roster and not be able to produce, versus maybe trading him and getting some draft compensation back, or even cutting him straight out and hopefully getting some sort of compensatory draft pick if he gets signed somewhere else.
Yeah, another thing that doesn't bode well for Trey Flowers this training camp is him having to go up against the #1 offensive tackle in this year's draft, Penny Sewell. That is a monster that he has to go up against each and every time he's trying to get to Jared Goff. And for Trey Flowers to actually stand out in training camp, it's near impossible against a mauler like Penny Sewell. So Trey Flowers really has his work cut out for him. But this is ultimately going to make him a better player if he's able to stick around on this roster, because iron sharpens iron, and Trey Flowers will eventually be able to play up against other offensive linemen like Penny Sewell. I think Trey Flowers has a potential to be big for the Lions, but only if he can make it through training camp.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I want to hear from you guys, fans of the NFC North. I want you to rise up and let us know in the comments down below which players we should keep an eye on the roster bubble, which players are going to make the most sense for some of these teams to simply walk away from, or possibly look to trade, maybe get some value back for them. I want to hear from you guys, so let us know in the comments down below. All right, that'll be all for now. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. We go live every single day. That'll be all. Peace and love.